In a dystopian Earth, an island's totalitarian government faces challenges in maintaining its population limit of 513 after an unexpected childbirth triggers a series of unfortunate events. In 2036, a small community of pandemic survivors live safely on Helgoland, an offshore island in Germany. However, a strict population cap of 513 is enforced due to limited resources. With each new birth, a life must end to maintain the limit. This can occur through voluntary sacrifice or community voting based on a ranking system where the most useful individuals hold high ranks. However, if an island worker meets an untimely demise, professionals from Hamburg, known as the mainland, are encouraged to apply for residency. Meanwhile, the militia takes care of the rebels who attempt illicit means of entry. While her family members watch, Amelie gives birth with the help of the doctor Marek and his assistant Judith. As this is a monumental event for the island, Lola, the reporter, documents everything. After the baby is born, Reich kisses his daughter goodbye and prepares for his voluntary sacrifice. With his family watching, he bravely jumps off a cliff to ensure everyone's survival. However, at the exact moment of her dad's demise, Amelie delivers a second baby, which shocks everyone. Due to the unexpected birth, Helgoland's president, Beatrice, calls for an emergency meeting with the council. Marek suggests keeping the extra child without sacrificing another person, hoping to prove that the island can sustain 514 lives. However, the priest disagrees, emphasizing the threat to everyone's survival. Due to the opposing views, Beatrice proposes letting everyone vote on whether to keep the baby or select someone for sacrifice. Later that day, Lola interviews the leader, who reassures everyone that the council will address the impact of the unexpected birth the following day. When asked about potential sacrifices, Beatrice announces that the decision rests with the people. However, she advises those with low ranks to improve their standing. Lola then displays the ranking board, disclosing those in the bottom three. Watching from home, Christian, who once damaged a truck, is shocked to learn that he is ranked 511th. When he considers refusing to jump if chosen, Hendrik, Beatrice's son, reminds his friend of someone who did it but ended up stuck in a cage at sea. The soldier then suggests he do something nice to boost his status instead. Elise ranks 512th for her minimal contributions to the community. Finally, at the 513th spot is Etienne, a repairman who once stole painkillers and is being punished with fasting. Assuming that people will vote for him to be sacrificed, he immediately worries and complains to his wife, Lisa, who starts thinking of a way to help him. In the lab, Linus assists his dad, Marek, with developing a cure for the virus. While at work, the teenager, newly enlisted in the army, insists on going to the mainland to find resources. However, his father disapproves, warning him that the place is infected. Their discussions interrupted when Judith picks up Marek to check on Etienne. However, during the visit, Lisa only blames the assistant for exposing the theft, resulting in her husband's low rank. Their conversations interrupted when a neighbor arrives to pick up a grandfather clock. Marek immediately realizes the couple is buying votes to avoid sacrifice, prompting the desperate woman to beg him to save her husband. In response, the physician promises to do what he can. Meanwhile, Amelie wakes up and finds Elise holding the baby. When the old woman explains that she was protecting the crawling baby from falling, the mother doubts her, suspecting ill intentions due to her low rank. However, Elise defends herself, insisting she would never harm the child. Later, Marek separates from Judith and visits Lore to secretly give her insulin. During their talk, she advises him to forget the past as Beatrice instructed. When he asks if she regrets what they did before, she admits to having nightmares about it. That afternoon, the supermarket opens and islanders rush inside. While they're getting supplies, Rico tells Amelie about his plan to sacrifice himself for the baby, but she stops him, emphasizing that it's not their fault for having twins. Meanwhile, Judith informs Beatrice of her suspicion that Marek is secretly supplying insulin to Lore. However, the unbothered leader calmly asks the assistant to keep it to herself. Beatrice also reassures Judith that she'll replace Marek soon and advises her to learn what she can from the doctor. Nearby, Marek places a jar of pickles in his basket but accidentally bumps into a child, causing him to drop it. Following Hendrik's advice, Christian helps the kid so Beatrice can notice and improve his rank. True enough, the leader praises this action, promising to award points to those who assisted the child. Later, Hendrik approaches Etienne, aware of his low status and food restriction punishment. He then proposes to provide food in exchange for something. Knowing what he means, Lisa attempts to hit him, but he blocks her, attracting people's attention. Witnessing this, Beatrice speaks to his son outside, advising him to fix his attitude because she can't protect him forever. Returning to the lab, Marek heads to the basement and visits Peter, his test subject from the mainland. During their conversation, the doctor learns the mainland is an awful and dangerous place. That afternoon, a desperate Lisa reluctantly accepts Hendrik's offer. They head to the supermarket storeroom where he takes advantage of her in exchange for a can of ravioli. However, their moment's interrupted when the soldier receives a notification that mainlanders are found in the security zone. Hendrik rushes to join his comrades and impulsively shoots the intruders. This action annoys Commander Mia, who reminds him to wait for her signal. The next morning, all the residents gather in the hall for the weekly rank adjustment and voting. Christian moves up to the 510th place while Lena takes his spot. During the vote, the majority agrees to keep the baby and sacrifice Etienne since he's in the 513th rank. To prevent her husband's demise, Lisa exposes Hendrik for stealing rations and taking advantage of her. When Beatrice asserts that the vote has been cast, Marek interjects and allows the woman to share the details of the soldier's wrongdoing. As a result, several women back up Lisa's story, ultimately convincing everyone to vote for Hendrik as the sacrifice. Beatrice is compelled to acknowledge the people's decision against her son. However, to prevent Hendrik's demise, she changes the rules and decides to banish him to the mainland instead of pushing him off a cliff. Later that day, Lola reviews the video she edited. Suddenly, her teenage daughter Fiona, who has a leg brace, notices that her mom took out the protest scenes to make the leader look good. That night, Beatrice visits Hendrik in his cell. Despite her son's anger, she wishes him well and gives him a lucky pendant, hoping he finds people to help him on the mainland. Meanwhile, Marek examines Peter, who's now contracted the virus. Despite receiving an antiviral shot, the test subject does not survive, prompting the doctor to cremate his body. The following morning, Linus reveals that he volunteered to join the soldiers in escorting Hendrik to the mainland. Despite Marek's disapproval, he insists on going, believing he can find resources on the island to help them develop a cure. Worried for his son, Marek visits Beatrice that night, asking her to cancel the mission. However, she refuses to assist him because the doctor betrayed her by going against Hendrik during the vote. The following morning, Linus bids goodbye to his dad, promising he'll return. Before being sent away, Hendrik headbutts Etienne, upset that he had to take his place. Meanwhile, Fiona meets with her boyfriend Tom, who worries about joining the military soon. When he tries to discuss starting a family with her, she brushes it off, finding the topic boring. On their way to the mainland, Heinz briefs Linus about the dangers, mentioning cannibalism due to the area's lack of food and the presence of the virus. Later, the nervous Hendrik tries to convince Linus to give him a gun for safety. However, the recruit refuses, knowing it's against the rules. Back on the island, there is a report that the water filtration system is on the verge of breaking down. It's supposed to be managed by Ewelike, an engineer they hired from the mainland. Upon receiving the alert, Beatrice heads to the facility. The chief engineer greets the leader, explaining that Ewelike is missing and he lacks the knowledge to remedy the situation. Suddenly, the engineer appears on the surveillance monitor and signals that the issue is fixed, which relieves everyone. Beatrice then advises the chief to readjust the cameras and find out why Ewelike left his post. Meanwhile, fearing repercussions, a woman discloses that the engineer has been keeping a radio, which is prohibited on the island. Hendrik's then dropped off at Hamburg. Hoping to turn things around, he offers to reveal his mom's secret stash in exchange for them taking him back. However, Heinz scares him off by shooting. Back in the facility, Beatrice confronts Ewelike, who explains that a defective sensor caused the alarm. The engineer then attempts to refer his wife, who lives on the mainland, for a pharmaceutical job on the island. In response, the leader promises to consider his request when an opportunity arises. After throwing Hendrik off, the soldiers continue sailing down the river for their next agenda. Arriving at their destination, Mia advises Linus to stay on the boat. Then, she commands the rest to accompany her and meet Earl, the Hamburg boss who trades copper and glass for fresh food. Suddenly, a desperate mechanic appears and interrupts the exchange. As the stranger begs to be taken to Helgoland, Earl's gunwoman shoots him down. Meanwhile, Linus decides to explore, discovering survivors inside a warehouse who assure him the virus is long gone. The old man then urges him to take off his mask and suit, but the skeptic recruit refuses, pointing his gun at him. As the survivors retreat, Mojik appears, giving Linus an unexpired flu vaccine. The intrigued recruit follows the mainlander, who promises he has more on a lab ship. The man then brings the soldier to his hideout, showing him the vaccine box. However, he offers to give it for a place in Helgoland. After the recruit explains he has no power to do such a thing, a couple of teenagers appear behind Mojik, revealing he's not alone. Meanwhile, the rest of the soldiers are on their way back to their boat when a mainlander attacks Heinz, removing his mask and infecting him with a virus. Mia quickly shoots the man, saving her colleague. However, as they board, the commander learns that Linus is missing, ultimately deciding to leave without him. When Mojik refuses to negotiate, Linus shoots and immediately exits the ship. Spotting the boat, he runs towards it. After breaking free from a sudden attack by a mainlander, he dashes further and reaches a high area. From there, he jumps off, landing safely on the boat. However, instead of celebrating her comrade's return, Mia worries upon noticing his torn suit. To their surprise, Mojik catches up and pleads to be taken to the island. However, the commander only shoots the man, leading to his demise. Shortly after, another soldier shoots a tranquilizer at Linus, thinking that he's infected. Upon arrival at Helgoland, Linus and Heinz are immediately washed before being placed in quarantine. Meanwhile, in the shower, Mia quickly realizes she's in big trouble for what happened to her fellow soldiers. In Hamburg, Earl and his men find Mojik's body along with a flu vaccine. The boss becomes curious about its origin, prompting him to search for the man's friends to gather more information. Upon meeting his dad, Linus shares about the possible existence of a ship lab on the mainland. However, when he hands over the flu vaccine, Marek doubts its authenticity, considering it might be a scam as mainlanders often lie to gain entry to the island. While Linus shows no symptoms, Heinz enters his cell coughing. Upon examination, the doctor notices a rash on the soldier's body, but Heinz defends himself, saying he got it from his suit. The next morning, the news about Heinz's condition spread throughout the community, causing great concern. To ease the anxious residents, Beatrice assures them that the ill soldier is isolated. Meanwhile, Marek confirms to his son that the flu vaccine is legitimate. When Linus proposes returning to Hamburg for more, the doctor advises against it, suggesting they contact the direct supplier instead. However, the recruit feels concerned for his comrade's state, urging his dad to prioritize developing a cure for him. Later, a stressed Beatrice arrives to inform Marek that the community is aware of Heinz's condition. In response, the doctor brings up the idea of returning to the mainland to get more samples of the flu vaccine, which can help develop a cure. However, Beatrice insists on utilizing what they have instead of risking another expedition. She then strategizes ways to distract the community from the bad news. The leader then visits Tom's family where Ewelike has been staying. She asks the couple to keep an eye on the engineer and find out who he's contacting with his radio. Meanwhile, in Hamburg, Hendrik encounters Wilma, who roams around with her cart, collecting valuables from survivors. Thinking he can use her, the banished man allures the old woman by showing his virus-free body and dancing with her. In the lab, Marek administers a new antidote to Heinz, but his condition worsens. Desperate to speed up his research, the doctor pleads with Judith to assist him in the trials. On the other hand, Beatrice meets Lisa to appoint her as her right hand, recognizing her talent for influencing people. Returning home, the woman informs the ill Etienne about the good news. With her new rank, she promises to find a proper job for him. Meanwhile, Marek brings Judith into the lab where she discovers that the doctor has been purchasing his lab rats from the mainland. He then shares with his assistant his method of using the flu vaccine to produce vaccines for the island. Marek then confesses that he's administering the flu vaccine to the subjects first and then the virus. The mainlanders have agreed to the deal for a month of good food, and if the vaccine proves effective against the virus, they can stay on the island. However, for their current trial, he shares that they injected first because they must expedite the process and find a cure for Heinz. Upon hearing this revelation, Judith criticizes Marek for his unethical practices, likening him to Beatrice. Despite this, she agrees to help him with the research but insists that he teach her all his skills. Unfortunately, Heinz passes away later that day. Beatrice feels terrible and wants someone to take responsibility for the soldier's death. On the other hand, Linus feels awful because his father couldn't save his comrade. After his father leaves, he checks his body, realizing he's already developing a rash. Meanwhile, Wilma offers clothes to Hendrik and invites him to the theater where she resides. Bonding over cigs, the old woman confides in the banished man, sharing her intention to give Earl a treasure. Hendrik then becomes interested in meeting the mainland boss. However, Wilma tells him that any message for Earl has to go through her first. She then excuses herself, promising to return later to spend a romantic time with him. Instead of staying behind, Hendrik follows Wilma into the locker room, discovering where she keeps her other treasures. He then ends her life by pushing her head against the wall and hitting her with a boombox. Following Heinz's demise, Beatrice gathers the community to honor the late soldier. Afterward, she blames Mia for letting her comrade get infected and recommends punishment for her negligence. Marek attempts to intervene, but the leader asks the people to vote, and it turns out that the majority favors removing Mia as the commander of the militia and downgrading her by 100 points. Suddenly, Fiona, seated in the last row, distracts everyone by fake cuffing. Her friends join in, which scares the people away. Despite this, Beatrice remains resolute in her decision and instructs her helper to adjust the ranking board. In response to the teenager's virus prank, the leader holds a meeting and introduces a new rule. Parents will be responsible for their children's actions. Although most of the council supports this decision, Marek disagrees. The community soon learns about the new rule. However, Laura, who opposes it, talks to Beatrice about reconsidering. The leader stresses the importance of parents being responsible, but the old woman challenges the president by bringing up Hendrik's unruly behavior. The offended president then promptly ends her conversation with Laura. She closes the door, walks towards the pool, and joins Federico, an import tech from Uruguay. However, just as she's about to kiss him, she gets turned off because of his grammatically incorrect pickup line. The next morning, Fiona throws up, and Lola suspects she might be pregnant. She then brings her daughter to Laura, who confirms the pregnancy. Knowing she'll be punished for her daughter's actions, the reporter tries to convince her daughter to get rid of the child. However, the angry teenager refuses to comply, leaving her mother behind. A tearful Lola returns to Laura, who comforts her and promises to keep the secret. But she warns the reporter that the pregnancy will be discovered eventually, so she presents her with another option. That night, Lola and Fiona reconcile, but the teenager remains determined to keep the baby. Unbeknownst to her, the tea she receives from her mom is intended to end the pregnancy. After Lola leaves, Tom, hiding in the closet, reveals himself. He shares his desire to avoid military duty and support his girlfriend in caring for their baby. That night, Ewelike contacts his wife on his radio, informing her that a slot has opened on the island, unaware that Tom's parents are secretly listening to their conversation. Soon, the teenager interrupts the couple with his arrival, announcing his refusal to join the military, which disappoints them. In the lab, the female test subject feels thirsty and requests the heater to be turned down. When Judith asks how long they'll continue, Marek responds that they'll do so until they have the antidote, mentioning they don't have much time. Hearing this, Judith becomes suspicious and curious about the reason behind the urgency. Later, after Marek leaves, Judith asks the test subject about her origin and learns that the woman's brother sold her to Earl in exchange for food. Meanwhile, Linus shows his rash to his dad, who swears he won't tell anyone about it. He reassures him that Judith is working with him on the vaccine, hoping they develop a cure for him. However, when Linus volunteers to test the antidote, the doctor refuses, knowing the risks. In Hamburg, Earl interrogates one of Mojik's friends, Spark, about where they got the flu vaccine. However, the teenager proposes to disclose the location only if the boss promises to take him to Helgoland. The leader then accepts the deal as he plans to take over the island. In the lab, Linus's condition worsens, and Marek gives him a shot. During their conversation, Linus requests him to find the ship lab, believing it exists. The doctor looks at his son and promises to do so. Marek then visits Mia, asking her when she'll return to the mainland. However, the ex-commander reminds him that she is imprisoned and directs him to a colleague who might be going there for the applications. Despite this, Marek offers to clear her with Beatrice if she helps him get a boat to go there. However, she insists he gets a route before they can make arrangements. In Hamburg, Hendrik travels with Wilma's cart and soon encounters a woman near the railroad. He offers her batteries in exchange for information about Earl's whereabouts. To his surprise, her family appears behind him, shocking him with a taser. Hendrik then awakens to find himself hanging upside down. When Jupiter is about to cook him, the man pleads, lying that Earl knows him. However, the unconvinced family only confronts him for having Wilma's cart, suspecting he ate her up. Still, Hendrik fabricates a story, saying that the old woman, who passed due to the virus, instructed him to give her cart to Earl. Hearing this, the cannibalistic family brings the banished man to the boss, offering him as a source of information. Hendrik then introduces himself as Beatrice's successor and lies, claiming he was kidnapped. He also shares about Wilma and the cart she wants to give to him. Earl quickly accepts the family's offer and grants Jupiter amoxicillin in exchange for Hendrik. Meanwhile, Ewelike contacts Kaizo, informing her that her application for the pharmaceutical position was considered. He expresses his excitement about seeing her and wishes her luck with the interview the next day. After inspecting his rabbit factory, Earl confronts the bound Hendrik, aware of his banishment and his involvement in Wilma's death. Scared for his life, Hendrik offers to help Earl infiltrate the island, revealing that he knows the weak spots in the island's defense ring. Later, the council meets the applicants for the pharmacist position through a monitor. Under Earl's supervision, Kaizo passes the initial test and will be interviewed for the final round. The woman then happily exits, passing by the line of other candidates including Daniela, who looks at her nervously. In the lab, Marek asks Judith why she is visiting the lab rats after they've already been injected. In response, the assistant explains she's just giving painkillers and vitamins to the patients. After his assistant leaves, Marek looks at the surveillance monitor and notices that Linus's rash has reached his neck.
Subscribe to watch more videos like this, turn on notifications and leave a like to help the channel out. Thank you for watching.